Check, check. Check, check. Okay, cool. We are live. All right. I've got my rat out, and I'm going to be listening to Jim's show. And so I'm just going to stream it right now for all the channels. So here we go. Oh, I am going to do a show tomorrow. So be watching for that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Holmes Politicast. I'm Jim, and I'll be your host for today. A lot of big news going on with the elections this week, and Biden just
Oh, wait. I wanted to do it from here. Yeah. We'll
got
do that.
back from his trip overseas for the quote-unquote climate summit, which really accomplished nothing, but it was a lot of talk, a lot of hot air, which probably attributes a lot to the climate, global warming. But anyway, so let me just start with the Biden thing. Yeah, they really didn't come up with a lot of deals. They mostly blamed China and Russia and Saudi Arabia because they didn't come to the climate meeting. So of course it was easy to blame them. And the thing is that they all agreed to cap their emissions, and by 2050 or 2030. I mean, they had different years that they were going to bring down their carbon emissions and things like this. But number one, America has a different problem than a lot of the other countries, and it's a unique problem if you consider it a problem. I don't, but I'm just saying if you're part of the climate group, then America has a unique problem, and that is that we are a democracy. I mean, okay. I mean, I know we're a republic, but we're a democratic republic. So the people vote on things. So in that sense, for our discussion, we're a democracy, let me just say. And that is a problem because we can't just unilaterally, the president can't just unilaterally make decisions. I mean, there are some things, like Trump was able to pull us out of the Paris Peace Accord. There are some things the president can do. But for majority of the things, the president just can't do it. This was a problem way back in the days of slavery. England was able to abolish slavery. I don't remember exactly the year. It was in the early to mid 1800s, and they were able to do that because they had a king. The king just decreed that slavery will no longer exist. America, it took a civil war to really put an end to slavery because the president couldn't just decree that slavery is going to be gone. And I know you'll use the example of Abraham Lincoln and all that, and that's a totally different story, and I'm not going to get into that one. But in normal times, the president can't just decree things. So Biden can get up there and say with all certainty, our goal is by 2030 or by 2050 that this is going to be our emissions. But he has to deal with the Congress. He has to deal with the American people. He has to deal with businesses. He can't just unilaterally make that decision. He can set a goal, but there's no guarantee that that goal will be met because the next president or Congress or any number of things, or maybe not the next one, but maybe two presidents or two Congresses from now, they could easily change that. It's not a decree that the king puts out and says this is how it's going to be, and you will follow it. So I'm always kind of leery at these things because the United States really can't make those decisions. And I know presidents are often embarrassed. Bill Clinton was embarrassed. George W. Bush to a certain degree. I know Bill Clinton was because I've seen some of his. Now after he's been out of office a while, they've released some of his transcripts, and he tells one country, and now I forgot what it was, but he tells them in there they're pressuring him to do something. Oh, I think it was about Kosovo, and sending in troops to Kosovo to help, or Rwanda to help the genocide that was going on, and he tells them that I have to deal with the Congress. I can't just send them in. We have a constitution in our country. The president has very finite abilities, and I have to deal with the Congress, and I have to deal with the American people. If the American people don't want me to go into a country, then I can't do that. Obama discovered that with Syria. He drew a red line and said, if they cross this line, it's going to be the red line, and we're going to go into Syria. And we moved toward it, and the American people said, no, we don't want to go to war with Syria. And Obama had to drop it because he's not a king. He can't just unilaterally decide we're going to war. He's got to base it on the American people. And of course, it frustrated him because now he looked like a fool. He drew a line in the sand. He told all the other countries in the world that if Bashir al-Assad does this, we're sending in troops to stop it. And the American people said, no, you're not. We're the boss. You're not sending in troops. And then he's stuck there. Okay, well, I can't do anything. The people told me I can't do it. Well, yeah, the rest of the leaders are probably laughing at him because, oh, yeah, big United States president. He's so most powerful man in the world, and you can't even go in there unless he gets permission, from the people or from Congress, So these things are kind of a joke anyway. And then secondly, my second point, which I'll get to real quick, is that there is no teeth. There is no way of implementing these protocols. It's just based on, to use the outdated term, a gentleman's agreement. They all just agree to, but if they don't, there is no international climate court that is going to, hold the United States or any other country accountable if they don't do it. It's just on your word. And this is what happened with the League of Nations. There was, there was a lot of opposing to the League of Nations, but Calvin Coolidge in the 1920s, he met with a number of countries after the League of Nations failed, and they came to an agreement that they wouldn't go to war with each other anymore. We would never have another world war. And one of the reasons why we had to create the United Nations later, after we had a Second World War, is that there was nothing binding. It was just, there was no teeth to this legislation. They just made an agreement. We're no longer going to go to war like we did before. And what happened? We went to war like we did before. Because, there is no teeth to it. There's no way to implement it. There's no way to make sure that anybody follows these rules. If you're a bigger nation like the United States, yeah, you can impose that on, Brazil or something, but there's no way to hold the United States accountable. Who's going to hold the United States accountable? We're the most powerful nation in the world. If we get another president who decides, I'm not going to do this climate nonsense, the other countries can balk and complain, but there's nothing they can do to stop the United States or to force the United States to implement it. So, I just feel like it's a lot of talk and it's a lot of feel good. Biden came out and said that we accomplished more in 2 days than in the history of the planet concerning climate change. Well, you didn't accomplish anything. So maybe you might be right. Maybe nobody's else even talked about it in a climate summit, but you really didn't accomplish anything. Nothing was really accomplished. They just patted each other on the back. And at one point they ridiculously threw a coin in the fountain to, as a wish for climate change, which is about as close as they're going to get to any actual, a wish in a well is about as good as they're going to get. I guess that must be the 2 days that Biden's talking about. We did more in 2 days than when we threw a coin in the well. But it's just, it's just nonsense in my opinion. It's just more talk by politicians. Not that I'm in big favor of them doing a lot of things, but I'm just saying it just annoys me that this is just what politicians do. If they really feel there's an actual climate crisis that we can do something about, then let's do something about it. Not just get together and talk and throw coins in a well and then say, oh good, we've done something. It just reminds me of like when Obama gave that speech in Egypt where he talked about how we need to end the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we need to not blame Muslims for all of our problems or whatever. I don't remember exactly. He was on his apology tour, and they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't do anything. He just gave a speech. He didn't bring peace to anything. He actually expanded the wars. He went into Libya, and there were more drone strikes killing innocent civilians than any other time in our history. But he got the Nobel Peace Prize because he gave a speech where he, you know, and wanted to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And they, I mean, this is what happens over and over in politics, particularly in democratic politics, is they get credit for wanting something. And it's always bothered me that they get credit, that if a person, you know, if a Democratic candidate gets up there and says, we need to heal the planet, we need to, you know, we need civil rights for all Americans, and blah, blah, blah. And then they're credited for doing so much for civil rights or doing so much for climate control and all these other things, when all they did is just brought it up. They didn't actually do anything. And Al Gore won the Nobel Prize for warning the world about climate change. I mean, he won it for warning the world. I mean, I could get on this podcast and warn everybody that climate change is going to destroy the world. Am I going to get a Nobel Peace Prize? Because I didn't do anything more than Al Gore did. You're just coming out and just saying something. Yeah, I'd like to see slavery ending around the world. I mean, I know that there are sex slaves, there are human trafficking, there is slavery in Libya, there is still slavery in the world today, actual real slavery. I'd like it all to end. Where's my Nobel Peace Prize? I said I want it all to end. I've done just as much as Biden or Obama or even Donald Trump. I mean, he talked a lot about human trafficking, which I was happy about. But but why aren't we all winning the Nobel Peace Prize? Because it used to be based on you doing something that you got rewarded. You brought peace to the Middle East, like Carter was able to bring Israel and Palestine together, and Trump, although he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, but he brought Israel and Egypt, who had been at war for a long time, in the Abraham Accords, and he brought peace there. Teddy Roosevelt brought peace between Prussia and Japan, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize. It used to be about accomplishing something, having real tangible results. Now, you get credit if you just talk about something. And it just a little bit of a rant there, but it just annoys me that nothing was really accomplished. I mean, really, I think if you want to do something that, instead of throwing the coins in the fountain, how about prayer? I mean, prayer is more effective than throwing a coin in a fountain. Pray about it. But of course they'll dismiss that as just a fantasy. And why are you praying, about real problems, as if your invisible, genie is going to suddenly cure the earth. But yeah, let's throw a coin in the fountain, because that's real effective. We all know how effective that is. I mean, it just bothers me. It really was a waste of taxpayer money to fly him over there and to participate in this. That could have been easily a Zoom meeting. He could have done from the White House, because it really didn't accomplish anything. Having him go in person didn't accomplish anything, and it didn't accomplish anything anyway, even if it was a Zoom meeting. But we would have saved all the gas and travel and the carbon emissions that Air Force One would have sent. I think it would have been much better if they were going to do it, to just do it over Zoom, and everyone just give their own little speech and be done with it. But anyway, and then of course we have the bills. The entire Biden administration is just going collectively down the drain. I mean, it can be salvaged. I say that to the sadness of most of my Republican listeners, because it can be salvaged. I mean, Bill Clinton's first 2 years were an absolute disaster for the Democrats. This is a pattern the Democrats have. The Democrats get the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they go crazy. And then they lose everything. It happened to Obama, it happened to Bill Clinton, and it's happening to Biden. I guess you could say Obama's another example of that too. So it can be salvaged, because both Clinton and Obama went on to win re-election and serve 8 years. But their first 2 years were a disaster. And that typically seems to happen when any party controls everything. The first 2 years of Trump's presidency was a disaster, because the Republicans couldn't decide on anything. They couldn't work together. There was all this infighting. Now that they've got power, Everybody wants to do their thing. Like, under Trump, there was a lot of questions about repealing and replacing Obamacare. Some Republicans wanted to get rid of Obamacare completely and go back to our old system. Some people wanted to tweak Obamacare and make it work. Some people wanted to get rid of Obamacare but replace it with something better. And so you end up fighting, and then they ended up not doing anything about Obamacare because they couldn't get any agreements. It is a problem when one party holds all power, typically, unless there's some unifying event like George W. Bush had 9/11, and he was able, when he had a Republican Congress, they were able to get a lot of things done because America was united behind the president. But many times it is a disaster. And in Trump's case, Trump, if it hadn't been for the coronavirus and the lockdowns and all that, I mean, Trump easily would have sailed for re-election because we had a thriving economy. He didn't do any real damage. I mean, he didn't accomplish a ton because, like I said, the Republicans didn't give him any real wins except for their tax break. Other than that, they didn't really get a whole lot. The Congress didn't do a whole lot. But the Democrats were a disaster when they took over, and they wouldn't give him anything either. So he didn't get a whole lot accomplished, but he still accomplished enough that he would have gotten reelected if it hadn't been for the lockdowns and all that. And I still don't know if it was just a side effect. The Democrats just were more concerned and all that, and just as a side effect it hurt Trump, or if they really planned it to hurt Trump. I don't know. But anyway, whichever way it was, it did hurt him by the constant harping about the coronavirus deaths and then the lockdowns, and it shut down the economy and tanked the stock market. And so anyway, back to my point, the Democrats, you can't count them out completely. I don't want anyone to say, well, the Democrats are done, there's no chance they can win. You need to be vigilant and going out and voting as if your life depends on it. You need to go out and vote because this they can recover from this. Like I said, Bill Clinton's presidency, even worse than Obama's, the first 2 years were just a disaster. And you had Helen Thomas and many of the reporters, very liberal reporters. I remember Helen Thomas distinctly because she had that really high-pitched voice asking him in a press conference, your presidency's going down the drain. Just everything was going wrong for the Clintons. And they were able to recover and win re-election. So things are going really bad for the Biden administration right now. But if Republicans aren't diligent, they can recover from this because we still have a little bit of time and before the midterms. But even if the Republicans win the midterms, it's not necessarily mean that Biden is going to lose. Now, Mitch McConnell is a really crafty politician, so he might be able to stop a lot of what Biden wants to do. But in Bill Clinton's case and Obama's case, the Republicans swept the House and the Senate in the midterms with Bill Clinton after 2 years in office, and Obama lost the House and the Senate to Republicans after 2 years in office because both of them were disasters, and they both went on to win re-election because they were able to turn it on the Republicans that it's their fault that things aren't getting done, and the people rewarded the Democrats because the Democrats blamed Republicans as being obstructionists, and we would get all these great things done had it not been for them. And that was what Trump was going to use in the midterms when the Democrats took over. Well, they only took over the House, but he was very successful, again, until coronavirus. He was very successful in blaming the Democrats, the reason why the wall wasn't being built, the reason why we weren't able to bring jobs back from overseas, the reason why we weren't accomplishing all these things is because the Democrats were obstructing. And it would have been a very effective strategy. And like I said, he would have won. But everything started spiraling out of control, or looking like it was spiraling out of control. And so it ended up not working for him But so my point is that the the, the Democrats can't be counted out completely, but they're in a hard time right now, and they're trying really hard to push through these big things, which is just was a mistake. I mean, if they really wanted to get all this stuff done, and I don't mean to help the Democrats because well, it's too late now, because they're not going to get anything really majorly accomplished next year during election year, and they probably will lose one or both houses of Congress in the midterms. But had they really wanted to accomplish something, they should have done a number of small incremental bills that had the effect overall of making sweeping change instead of trying to pass two or three major bills that cost trillions of dollars while we're in a recession, while inflation is hitting hard, and they're trying to pass these $1 trillion deals. It's going to be really hard for them. They would have been better off to pass a small voting rights bill and then a bill to help small businesses, and then a bill to just small incremental things that if you add them all up, it's trillions of dollars, and it's gonna bring jobs and whatever they're claiming that they're going to get. That would have been better to do a series of small bills, get them passed. There wouldn't have been a lot of fighting, because they could get them passed in a couple of weeks, as opposed to now taking months and months and months to try to get this major voting rights bill and this major infrastructure bill and this major coronavirus bill. All these things, it's just too much. It looks like overreach. It looks like they're trying too hard to take over the economy, to take over uh, the country, and it's backfiring, really. So, you know, it's something to keep in mind for the Republicans if when they get back in power, which they will at some point here. Uh, they will control all three branches at some point. I don't know when that'll happen. I don't know if that'll be in 4 years or if it'll be 8 years or whatever. But at some point, Republicans will have control, and that's my advice to them would be to try to pass a number of smaller bills to get their agenda instead of doing an omnibus bill, they call it, this huge bill. It's like reaching for the stars, and they're gonna come up short. They may get something out of this. I mean, I'm not saying they're not going to pass something. They may get something passed here very soon, but it's not going to be everything that they wanted. It's going to be being very watered down because people just aren't in the mood uh, for a major bill. I mean, this isn't the Great Depression. We're not in the Great Depression, and you know, people are struggling, and when they're hearing that the government wants to use their hard-earned tax dollars, which is already being squeezed on all sides from the government, and then a lack of jobs and or lack of hiring, I should say. There's not really a lack of jobs, but and then inflation going up and gas prices and food prices and they've got so much on their mind, and then on top of that, it feels just like waste. So you want to spend $1 trillion, to for all these little pet projects. I mean, we've got, how about sending some of the money back to us? I mean, we're squeezed here. We're losing our homes. We're barely able to pay our bills. Prices keep going up. Wages aren't going up. Prices are going up. Taxes are going up. And yet, we're still making the same amount. And, we don't have the money to just keep spending and feeding Washington and their fat bellies. So that's the big national stuff. There's a few things I want to talk about. In the state, I wanted to talk about the states. I want to talk about Virginia winning, Lincoln winning in Virginia. The Republican, great news for the Republicans. There is a number of things that the Republicans and Democrats are getting wrong about this race. It is a good sign for the Republicans. It means that in a post-Trump world, we can still win. I mean, Republicans were pretty discouraged because, with Donald Trump, we went through a series of losing. Republicans lost the White House. They lost the Senate. Of course, they didn't have the House. We lost California recall. Um, and then before that, losing the Senate, we lost the 2 Georgia Senate races, and it was becoming somewhat discouraging that you know people were starting to wonder maybe Donald Trump did a lot more damage than we thought. Maybe it's irreparable. Maybe it's going to take a generation for the Republicans to save themselves, like it did after Herbert Hoover was so disastrous, or appeared to be so disastrous. I have my own feelings on Herbert Hoover, but the Republicans lost the White House for 20 years, and rarely, and I didn't win the House back for 40 years, and just intermittently would win the Senate. But the Republicans were, they were denied the promised land after the Great Depression was blamed on them. It took a whole generation before Dwight Eisenhower was able to bring the Republicans back, um, and to be a major party again. Democrats just ruled everything. So there was some feeling that maybe that happened with Trump. Maybe we were going to have another generation where the Republicans are in the wilderness and the Democrats control everything for a long time. So this is heartening to see that Republicans haven't lost their touch. That, yeah, we had a few losses. We lost a few battles, but it doesn't look like we're going to lose the war. It looks like we're coming back. And that's one of the great things that Glenn Youngkin did, is he didn't attack Donald Trump, which I really appreciated. He didn't denounce Donald Trump. He didn't embrace him and campaign with him. But he didn't denounce him. He didn't. So he was able to thread that needle of saying, I appreciate Donald Trump's support. I appreciate his endorsement. But times have moved on. We're not going to continue to litigate the 2020 election and all this. I'm going to run on real issues. So it's definitely a sigh of relief for Republicans, because, and the Republicans won big in Virginia. They won the lieutenant governorship. They won the attorney generalship. So, but the Democrats made a major mistake. It's the same mistake Hillary Clinton made in 2016, is that McAuliffe tried to run a national campaign and he ran against Donald Trump. And the truth is, people don't really care. I mean, I know this might sound the wrong way when I say people don't really care about Donald Trump. What I mean is, they're not interested in, like I said, relitigating. Donald Trump's no longer in office. People aren't interested in these labels. Oh, Glenn Youngkin is another Donald Trump. He's a mini Trump. Nobody cares. That was McAuliffe's major mistake, although there was a lot of mistakes McAuliffe had. But one of his major mistakes is that he didn't run on anything, just like Hillary Clinton didn't run on anything. She ran that she wasn't Donald Trump. Look at Donald Trump over there. Look at him. Look what he says. Do you really want your children to hear that? I'm not Donald Trump. Vote for me. And Donald Trump in 2016 was running on bringing jobs back. He was talking about bringing America back, bringing back respect, bringing back honor and decency, and to the White House. Like I said, bringing jobs back, getting us out of all these ridiculous treaties, getting us out of the wars, all these things. And Hillary Clinton was just running on, I'm not Donald Trump. And that's what McAuliffe was running on, is a vote for Glenn Youngkin is a vote for Donald Trump. And Glenn Youngkin, on the other hand, was running on Republicans typically run on, and a winning issue. He was running on local issues. He was running on bread and butter issues. He was talking about getting rid of the dairy taxes, because the price of milk was getting really high, and it was hard for people, primarily mothers, to buy milk for their children, for their cereals and things. And he ran against that. He ran saying parents have a right to know what's going on in their children's education. Terry McAuliffe, like an absolute fool, in the debate said that parents don't have any right and shouldn't have any input in what's taught in their children's school. That was the dumbest thing I think anybody has said in a campaign debate since Walter Mondale claimed that he would raise your taxes if he was elected. I mean, why would you say something like that? Even if you believed it, even if you totally believe parents shouldn't have any input, government should run everything. Even if you believe that, why would you be stupid enough to say it in public? I mean, you don't say that. You don't tell parents that they don't have any right to know what their kids are going to be taught. You know, Glenn Youngkin was running against the critical race theory. He was running against mask mandates. He was running not just against, he was running pro family issues. You know, parents should have decisions about whether their kids are forced to wear masks. Parents should have decisions about whether their kids are vaccinated. Parents should have decisions about what is being taught to their children about race and about history. And, you know, he was running on actual real issues that the people of Virginia cared about. And meanwhile, McAuliffe was just out there running about, you know, he's going to be another Donald Trump. You know, it was just a dumb, it was just a dumb thing. So I'm really heartened, and I like Glenn Youngkin. I watched the debates, even though they don't affect me. I watched them, and I've never, you know, I'm a little biased because I was never a fan of Terry McAuliffe anyway, uh, and that's a whole different story. I could go on about why I didn't like Terry McAuliffe for a long time, but I did. But it wasn't just I didn't want Terry McAuliffe to win because I didn't like him. I legitimately liked Glenn Youngkin, so I'm happy to see he won. You know, this wasn't just I want to see a Republican win or I just want to see McAuliffe lose. I actually liked Glenn Youngkin, so if I was in Virginia, I would have proudly voted for him. Um, so I'm happy to see that, and I'm hoping that the Republicans um, remember what got them elected and made them a great party, and that is running on issues that people care about, not, you know, issues that affect them. And you know, it's just a losing campaign if they're just going to run on issues like Arizona was stolen, you know, or things like that. You know, that's not going to resonate in Michigan. It's not going to resonate. I mean, that might be true, but people want to know, what are you going to do in our state? How are you going to help us live our lives better? You know, and in some cases that means getting out of our lives to help us live our lives better. That's what they want to hear about. They don't want to hear a relitigation of, you know, are you pro Trump or anti Trump? Do you think the election was stolen? And things like that. I mean, those might be secondary issues. You know, you know, like you might say, I want uh, the ballots to be audited, forensic audits, but those should be secondary issues. Those shouldn't be the top issue that you're running on. Those should be secondary issues that, along with all these things we want to do, we also want to make our elections secure. You know, and those are the things that you need to run on. The Republicans need to run on bread and butter issues. Talk about things that are really going to affect Americans, and um, and social issues do that. You know, issues like critical race theory and abortion are important issues to a lot of people, and that's where the Republicans really need to focus on, and that's a winning issue. And let the Democrats run on the idiocy. In Minnesota, they they voted on defunding the police, and the people of Minneapolis voted overwhelmingly to keep the police force. I mean, the Democrats are running on losing issues. They might sound good on TV, on MSNBC or CNN, but they're not winning issues. Defunding the police, being pro-abortion, being pro wokeness. You know, uh, uh, they're not winning issues, and so let the Democrats run on that. Let the Democrats run like lunatics on issues that nobody cares about, and the Republicans say, we're interested in helping the American people. You know, inflation is too high, taxes are too high. You know, the government is out of control, trying to control your children's education. They want to decide what your kids need to learn. They want to decide, you know, what you know, whether you should have a gun or not. They want to decide, you know, that murder is okay of an unborn child. They want to decide, you know, they want to make all these decisions that are contrary to common sense and to what Americans believe inherently. And, you know, let the Democrats run their crazy election. Just ignore them. Run on the real issues, and Republicans are going to win. And Republicans win in a landslide in the midterms and in the presidency if they run on that. Because seriously, nobody likes Biden and Harris. Nobody. They'll win in a landslide if they run on those issues. But if we just spend the time relitigating the past and insulting the Democrats, you're not going to win. The Republicans aren't going to win because the American people are smart enough to know the Democrats are lunatics. They don't need the Republican candidate to remind everybody the Democrats are lunatics out there. We already know. American people know that. So tell us what you're going to do differently. Tell us what you want to do, and people will juxtapose that with the ridiculous ideas that the Democrats have and say, we want the Republicans. Anyway, all right. We're getting close. But here's a couple of state issues. I thought I hit a paywall here. It's in the Detroit Free Press. Michigan to add X option for driver's licenses and state IDs for non-binary people. Now, you will know about this a little bit if you follow our Twitter account, because this has been posted on there and discussed a little bit. But Michigan will soon expand the choices for the sex listed on residents' driver's licenses and state identification cards to include an X option for non-binary people. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson announced the change Tuesday. I am proud to support Michiganders across the state who for many years have called on the Department of State to provide a non-binary sex marker on their ID that matches their lived reality, Benson said in a statement. I have a problem with the word reality because they're living in a fictional world, but okay. I would have picked that matches their lived delusion, maybe. The option will be available starting November 10th. Anyone wishing to change their sex marked to the non-binary option can visit a Secretary of State's office branch then. In 2019, the Secretary of State's office issued new rules to allow residents to correct their sex designation without providing a birth certificate, passport, or court order, as was required under the old policy for changing the sex indicator on a driver's license. But the change did not provide a non-binary option at the time because of technological constraints, the Secretary of State's office said. The Michigan Department of State completed overhauling its technology in March to program the non-binary option, according to a news release from the department. The announcement comes on the heels of news from the U.S. Department of State to launch a non-binary option for U.S. passports in early 2022. All right. That is just, what's even the point of having a driver's license with all this information on it? It used to be, the reason we went from just having, a license, just your name, I guess, was for a lot of different reasons for police. So they could, they list your eye color and your hair and, and whether you need glasses, and all these things were to help identify you. But now if there's an X, what is the point of even then? Why do we even put on there? Just take off the sex completely then. Just take it off. I don't know why if anybody, if I can go down and just change it to X so no one knows whether I'm a male or female, then what's the point of even having you list if you're a male or a female or X? Just take it off completely. Because if the police aren't going to be able to use it to determine your sex, then there's no point in wasting time and even putting it on there. This is just complete idiocy. I don't know. And then it just opens up a whole bunch of questions. If you have a name like Terry or Chris and you're arrested and it says X and you don't really look like a boy or a girl, you might have your hair long or whatever, how are they going to know what pod to put you in? You're going to be put in with the men, or you're going to be put in with the women? You'd have to do a strip search, I guess, but even that is open to a lawsuit. If a man strip searches a woman, even if she's dressed as a man, he could be charged, because law and common sense tells you that if a woman is being strip searched, she should be strip searched by a woman, and vice versa. I mean, for years that was the law, that men could not strip search women in jail. You had to have a woman, whether she was a law enforcement officer or not. I mean, even if she was just a secretary, you have to have a woman there, to, you know, if a woman's being strip searched, I mean, that's open to a lawsuit. But if he doesn't know, it just says X, and the man strip searches. Does a guy really want a woman standing there watching him be strip searched? Does a woman really want a man standing there watching her be strip searched? I mean, you can't bring in both sexes as far as wardens to strip search somebody. That'd just be uncomfortable and embarrassing. And I don't know, it just opens up all kinds of questions. And Republicans have to win the Secretary of State's office next time. This is just ridiculous. There's no excuse for this. And I doubt anyone is calling, been, flooding the phone banks wanting to know why there's no X. I mean, statistically, you're talking less than 1%, like quite less than 1%. If they're being inundated with calls, they're talking about like maybe two people who are taking turns calling all day and night. Two people. I mean, you're not having hundreds of thousands of Michiganders calling, demanding an X put on their Secretary of State's license. Plus, on top of that, aren't we suffering enough in Michigan without having to use our tax dollars for that? Anyway. And now, in Grand Haven, in the city that I grew up in, I have to hurry up here, voters agreed to axe gender-specific language from Grand Haven City Charter. Language in Grand Haven City Charter will be gender-neutral after voters on Tuesday approved an amendment suggested by the City Council. The amendment to the charter was one of 3 that received the thumbs up from voters. The proposal to remove such pronouns as he, she, his, her, and him, her from the charter and replace them with such neutral gender terms as they, their, them was approved by the narrowest margin among the 3 amendments. Unofficial results show that amendment was approved by a vote of 1,620 to 1,146. Voters also agreed to remove city charter language that requires the city attorney be present at all city council meetings. They approved by an unofficial vote of 1970 to 769 to have the charter instead say the attorney shall be available for guidance during county meetings. An amendment to remove city charter language that is no longer accurate was approved. The amendment removes outdated language that established the city hospital and the library as departments of the city, provides city representation on the Ottawa County Board of Supervisors, and creates a municipal court of the city. I'm ashamed of Grand Haven. And let me do one more story here because we're running out of time. 3 incumbents on the Grand Haven City Council, including the mayor, lost their bids for re-election. In the mayoral race, Grand Haven Mayor Robert Monetza lost to Catherine McNally by a vote of 1,080 to 1,673, or about 39% to 60%. Monteza was seeking a second term in the seat, which is a 2-year term. He was a council member for 10 years before his term as mayor. McNally is a retired captain in the U.S. Coast Guard, where she was an officer, attorney, and instructor. 2 incumbents on the city council lost their bids Tuesday, retained their seats as well. With 4 candidates vying for 2 seats, incumbents Mike Dora and Dennis Scott failed to garner more votes than Karen Lowe and Kevin McLaughlin. Let's see. And on the Board of Light and Power, Andrea Hendrick and Michael J. Westbrook landed more votes than the 2 others, Andy Cawthorn and Jerry McCaleb. So Ms. Hendrick and Mr. Westbrook will be chosen for the Board of Light and Power again. So anyway, those are some news from around the world and around the corner. And we're running out of time here, so hope everyone has a great week. And we'll talk more in depth next week about everything pertaining to Michigan and the world. And see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
I like that. News from around the world and around the corner. That was good, Jim. That was actually awesome. I really like listening to him. He's way better than I am. I don't know why he doesn't take the Friday slot and live stream and all that stuff. Probably because it'd be a bit difficult for him to do. Um, but regardless, I will be back tomorrow with the Friday slot. I'm not as good as Jim, but I'm what you got for Friday. So thank you guys, everybody, for listening. We're going to do the closing sequence one more time because you just got to love it.